We're now going to look at the history of animal behavior. And you might wonder, well, why? Why bother with history? Because basically, everything has historical roots. You know, there's a lot of new research, but there's no brand new research as such. I mean, there can be in terms of the development of new techniques that weren't available ages ago. Like, for example, certain advances in neuroscience and genetics techniques, DNA analysis that we didn't have available decades and decades ago, centuries ago. But we have those now. But still, the kinds of questions that people ask when using these techniques typically have historical roots that sometimes go back a long way. How far back do they go? Well, some of them actually are traceable to the Upper Paleolithic epoch. Oh, somewhere around 25,000 BC. Different people have different dates for these things, but, plus or minus. So basically, we're dealing with a time when the Neanderthals were around in Western and Southern Europe, around 50,000 BC, so that's much earlier than the Upper Paleolithic. And in fact, that's actually a real Neanderthal skull. I took that photograph in the Bonn Museum, Bonn, 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 Germany. So that is not a cast. You often see casts. This is the real thing. And that is a drawing of a possible reconstruction, one of many, many theories that people had about what the Neanderthals might have looked like. This is the hairless version because, people often drew these folks as if they were all hairy and everything, and there was some evidence that, that there may not have been any justification for that. But, different people have different schemes. Anyway, this is probably before an interest in animal behavior began, because if we move on to the very next period when they were replaced by the Cro-Magnons, now we're in the Upper Paleolithic epoch, and that's, by the way, a Cro-Magnon skull. And what we know about Cro-Magnons is they left a great deal of cave art. Probably not so much the Neanderthals, it's often hard to tell, but definitely the Cro-Magnons did. And we know from their art that they were keen observers of animal behavior, all kinds of animal behaviors, because these are well depicted in the art that they left inside of these caves. Now, it turns out that there may have been good reason for their interest in animal behavior, because they were nomadic. So because they were wandering around, they were, out in the open and probably not all that well protected. And so they had to observe animals because animals would have been quite a threat to them. And in some cases, they were probably even hunting animals as a source of food. So again, they had to know things about how animals might go about escaping from people when they were hunting them. So that is probably one of the reasons why they were so good at portraying animals in their caves with such detail and in terms of portraying various types of behavior patterns, because they were obviously spending a great deal of time watching them. So we know that they were observed as both prey and predators, as I just mentioned. And some of the main caves where we've found a great deal of valuable cave art is Lascaux in southern France, Altamira in northern Spain, and much more recently discovered was a cave called Grotte Chauvet in France. And that was kind of unique, as we'll see in a moment. So just a couple examples here of some of the art. Here in Lascaux, we see a portrayal of animals in motion. There's probably some kind of migratory pattern going on. And we see the same thing here. not just static images, but animals that look like they are going from one place to another. Here is a horse of some sort, also from Lascaux. And in Altamira, a buffalo, again, in vivid detail. It's incredible how much detail that they were able to portray. Remember, they're drawing in very poor lighting situations. Caves are dark. I mean, they probably had some fire to go by, but they would have had to have had something, obviously. But still, they don't. They certainly didn't have the kind of situations that a modern artist would have by any means. Now, Grotte Chauvet. Grotte Chauvet is kind of unique in France. And one of the reasons is that it was discovered fairly recently, Christmas Day actually in 1994. It's 32,000 years old as far as people can tell. There's over 420 drawings, but one of the unique things about it is we see evidence of the first predators being portrayed in Grotte Chauvet, animals that were not found as having been portrayed in any of these other cave sites. And by the way, these are people down here, so the entrance is down in this area to the cave. Some of you may have seen a movie that came out in 2010 by the German film director and producer Werner Herzog called Cave of Forgotten Dreams. He actually got access to the cave after they closed the cave to the public because they're really concerned. They want to make sure that nothing happens to these valuable cave drawings. So they let him in and a film crew consisting of about 4 other people to do some filming. And so it's one of the best resources in terms of actually seeing what is going on inside of the cave in terms of the drawings that were left behind. And so this is a short segment from the movie. Just saw a rhinoceros type creature back there. These are lions, cave lions. There's also cave bears somewhere in there. Actually, right there, I think. So the first predators. Here is a woman describing some of the art. A very short segment.
This is one of the most beautiful panels in the cave, along with the lion panel at the far end. And here we can see the technique of prehistoric man, but you can also see their keen knowledge of the animal world. They tell us stories. Here you have an ensemble of horses, but their open mouths suggest that the animals are whinnying. That is to say that these images become audible to us. You see that the 2 rhinos there are fighting. You can see all the signs of fury towards each other. The movement of their legs, which are thrown forward, and you can almost hear the sound of their horns colliding against each other in the movement of the fight. Here you have another story, a story of lions, a male courting a female who is not ready for mating. She sits and growls. Look, you can hear the female growling. She's raising her lips. She's baring her teeth. She is not happy. And here to finish off, you have the flight of this bison. We hear the hooves. We can make out multiple legs indicating its movement. It is escaping from this alcove, following this auroch.
So, obviously, behavior patterns being portrayed in this cave. So, different areas of the cave have different types of art that was left behind. So, down in that area, we have cave bear art. Lions and rhinoceroses are typically found in that area. An owl, the panel of the owl is in that area, and so on and so forth. We're not going to go through every possible type of art that's found in Grotte Chauvet. And there was more Cro-Magnon art other than cave art. Some of it was mobile. Remember, they were nomadic, so they were moving around from place to place. So they made carvings. Here we have a carving of a bird's beak in this bone. and there's the bird's eye right there. So they were obviously carrying various pieces of art around them as they went from place to place. Interestingly, portrayal of humans was very crude. As good as they were in terms of portraying animals, they did not invest a great deal of time portraying themselves. Rather crude-like, almost animalistic type people, or stick figures of people relative to the much more sophisticated cave art that they left of animals. We have no idea why that was the case. Well, moving forward in time, we come to around 9000 BC, the Neolithic epoch. And this is around the time that domestication began. So people started to breed animals for different purposes, probably more often than not for food. The art was rather crude for whatever reason. Who knows? Don't know why. Next up, the Minoan period, also known as the Bronze Age, from around 1700 to 1200 BC. And now we have very striking instances of portrayals of animals. Very realistic form and motion in animal art and carvings. Different things, for example, this is a coin. I believe it was from Greece. And if you just look at the musculature of this horse, and given the fact that this is like a coin, this is a very small item, yet they were able to accomplish so much in terms of how well the musculature of the horse is portrayed. Now, if we move forward to subsequent early civilizations, we have mythological aspects of animals. Magic dominated this particular period. People were superstitious. They had all kinds of religious superstitions. And different cultures were worshiping different species. So there was all kinds of interesting things going on here in terms of how people were viewing animals more as religious type objects than anything else. So an interest in behavior, per se, actually appeared to decline because people were busy worshiping animals as godlike objects. Here's a contemporary example of that.
Welcome to the Rat Temple.
We consider the rats as a form of the goddess. We worship them.
Jatudin believes they are his ancestors, reborn as rats.
Some are my fathers, my grandfathers. My whole family is here. When they die, they're born as rats. When a rat dies, it's born as us humans.
So at least in terms of the earlier times, even though people apparently were not all that interested in animal behavior per se, because they were busy worshiping them, at least there was continued contact with animals, albeit as godlike objects. And that certainly carried on to influence what happened later on as people once again ultimately got interested in animal behavior. And we'll be looking at that in all of the later segments having to do with the history of animal behavior.